UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Today we look at the 2026 elections, especially the quest for power or leadership, whichever way you look at it. 5 aspirants look like they are vying for the presidential candidate of this country. Already, some parties seem to be heading in a direction that shows us exactly what their mindset is. If you look at the National Resistance Movement, over 60 members have sought to become part of SEC. Also, when you look at the National Unity Platform, nominations, expressions are almost done. PFF is also gearing in to get its members in. By Tuesday next week, it will have an interim leadership team that will be there. All parties seem to be gearing up for expression and nominations coming to an end, but also the echelons of power in all these parties seem to be ready. 5 seemingly aspirants. What are they jostling for? Can Uganda win at all costs? But also, what are the issues that need to be on the table, especially when we look at them? But today we'll come from the generalities of the party. We'll also look at the NRM. We'll look at what recently happened with PFF and ANT. But with those two, they'll be giving us a gist of what is happening. Let me introduce the panel that is here to take us on. On my immediate left, Professor Sarah Sali, the director at the Institute of Gender and Development Studies at Makerere University, is with us this evening. Good evening, Professor, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, our viewers.
Last week we missed you in the most contentious conversation we had,
yes,
twice in a row.
Yes, but last week we were also burying a young man who died in an unexpected way, Mr. Balamushuti Kabasa.
Yes.
He slept and he didn't wake up. So that's the day exactly we buried him in Kacherere. It was a very sad moment for the family. Yeah.
We still condole with the family. It was
Yes.
a trying time.
Yes.
Next to Professor is Nicholas Opio, a human rights lawyer, but also the founder of Chapter 4 Uganda. He's with us this evening. Good evening, Nick, and it's good to have you.
Well, thank you very much for having me, although I don't work for Chapter 4 anymore.
I say founder. I left that founder.
But it's a pleasure to join the panel today with distinguished panelists, people
Yes.
that I've looked up to for a very long time, my elders, my mama here on my immediate left. I also missed the last 2 discussions because it is dear to me. It's in my backyard, in my ancestor area. But I watched what you discussed here, and thank you for having those discussions.
I saw you comment about it on social media, so we left it at that.
Yes, thank you very much. I was also out of the country, so even if you wanted me to come, I wouldn't be able to join.
Next to Council Nicholas Opio is Honorable Proscovia Salam Musumba, part of the promotion of the People's Front, promoters of the People's Front for Freedom, is with us this evening. Good evening, Honorable Salam, and it's good to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here with a lovely panel. Nick, never shared a panel with you, so I'm really happy and pleased that I can sit next to you.
Thank you, Mama. Although the blue has become less darker than it used to be.
Don't you worry, blue is always blue. Yeah.
Next to Honorable Proscovia is Honorable Captain Edward Francis Babu, a senior citizen, and is with us this evening. Good evening, Honorable, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting us. I'm pleased to be with this panel, and I hope we'll be able to solve your questions.
You always have a job
many
for us.
years ago, I was told going to school is to learn how to find solutions to problems.
Yes.
And therefore, I hope today we'll be able to find a solution to your questions.
You parked all the pilots on the other end.
Yeah.
They don't fly off.
So that we fly in the right direction.
Yes. and of course,
That's the cockpit of the show.
of course, I'm still very excited by the mayoral race in New York.
Yes.
Wow.
Simply because there's a gentleman who happens to have been from Uganda, and very interesting. His names are very interesting. The interesting bit is the Kwame part.
Oh.
Kwame, and I'm very pleased. In fact, I'm following it very, very seriously. And I heard him speak. I was very impressed.
Wow.
He's young.
The products Uganda can do,
Yeah.
what you can export potentially in the market.
Thank you.
No, unfortunately,
Really, when you
it
talk
was-
about election, that is one election you should talk about.
It was a very good week for Uganda in the US because 2 Ugandan-raised kids were also drafted in the NBA.
Yes, true.
And former Uganda Cranes captain Sekaja was also elevated to a coach of a big New York
Yes.
football club, the Red Bulls.
Wow.
So it's a good day for Uganda last week.
Lastly but not least, Honorable Captain Mike Mukula, National Vice Chairperson of the National Resistance Movement for the Eastern Region, the incumbent and the aspirant. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. It's a pleasure. I've not seen Salam for a bit of time.
Now you found me.
Yes, it's a good get-together. And Nicholas Opio, I've not seen him for a bit of time. But it's a pleasure being on UBC tonight
Thank you.
with a very excellent and vibrant team.
Thank you very much. You can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there. We'll get to it in a bit. But also we're streaming live on the Space X there. Get there, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Let us know what you think. The number for your text and WhatsApp, 0709 60 92 25. Send your text or WhatsApp and we'll get to them in a bit. Let's get into it. This past week, the president expresses his intention. He's given the papers. Saturday this week, he'll be passing on the nomination papers back to the National Resistance Movement Electoral Commission there. But also it has happened for the National Unity Platform. It has happened for DP. It has happened for DF, the Democratic Front also. And PFF and ANT have a surprise they gave us today. But let me start with Nick. Nick, when you look at, first of all, there was a procession that headed towards where the president was making his expression. The president sat. The Secretary General is the one that stood up to give the details of the expression. What did you make of this whole scenario as the president is seeking the 7th term to be both the chairman of the NRM but also the president of the country? And it will be marking 40 years come January next year.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I think that of all the political formations in the country, the National Resistance Movement appears to have been a lot more organized in their internal process than the others, at least thus far. And there are many reasons you can say for that. Some of the parties are still newly formed. Many of the parties have to jump through hoops and roadblocks and spikes to conduct their internal party processes. And so that process combined has left the NRM apparently looking more organized than all the rest in the way that they have gone about this process. They were prepared early. They laid out a roadmap. Many of the parties, you still cannot tell whether they have a roadmap or not, or whether they will have internal democratic processes for elections of their flag bearers and office holders. It is difficult to tell. And so I think that the president physically going to the NRM Electoral Commission expressing interest was very symbolic in the sense that he subjected himself to an internal process of the party. What is also interesting is the contest for the chairperson of the National Resistance Movement and how the other contestants for the position were being treated when they turned up to pick up forms. But clearly, you could tell by the people who were assembled at the NRM headquarters for that exercise and those who accompanied him, that you have the top 1% of this country in terms of age leading the bottom 99%. This country is ripe for a transition and a change of guards because the aspirations of the young people are far different from the aspirations of those who are in charge, especially at the NRM, who have this nostalgia about the past and tend to explain the progress of this country in large spans of time. When we came in 1986, that sort of narrative is one that doesn't cut it now, I think. for the vast majority of people in this country. And the country is yearning for change. And I think many people believe that if President Museveni is elected, or should I say when, is elected as president, this might be his last term. You can tell physically that he's not the same man who swore in the steps of Parliament in 1986. He's not the same guy who ran against Paul Kawanga Semagere. Whether by function of biology or just a function of desire, I think that many of us now believe that should he serve this term, this will be his last term. If he loves this country, my view is that he should have gone long ago.
Just a follow-up question before I come to Honorable Salam. When you see, especially, 2 people killed, for retired AIGP Grace Akulo's car vandalized, and you look at those incidents there, you listen to the president and he's emphatic about eradicating poverty, corruption, and he said that so many times. But the other word that caught me was, after these 5 years, we shall see what happens. When you see all those things surrounding this expression, what do you depict from it?
No, the show of violence on the streets of Kampala by groups such as those we saw on the weekend is not surprising. It has happened so many times in the lead up to the election. And on both sides of the aisle. Remember, the Honorable Lukwago and Munyagwa had his group, I forget their name, that were also dressed in uniform, threatened to do violence on the street. But predominantly it has been the state-inspired violence from Chiboko squad that ran out of Central Police Station with sticks and working alongside policemen to beat up people on the streets, to border 2010, to crime preventers, to LDUs. In the run-up to the elections, there are always formations that work alongside certain sections of the state to wreak violence. And I think it is the privatization of violence for the purposes of masking accountability. And if you followed the actions of the head of crime intelligence, really he has been working with many of these groups in what he calls ghetto youths, under ostensibly an economic empowerment exercise. But many of these were really some of the people you saw on the streets. I hope that their trial in the Buganda Road Court, and we must applaud the police for arresting some of them, will unmask the dirty preparations that the crime preventers, the crime intelligence folks have been undertaking in the ghettos of the city. Needless to say, those actions are reprehensible.
Okay.
They are actions that must be repudiated by every well-thinking Ugandan. But that they happen too often without accountability should really worry everyone, especially that nobody is safe from it. If the former director of CID, a well-known figure in this country, could fall victim to that sort of unlawfulness, really anybody could have fallen victim. If the good professor was there, I'm sure she would not have survived. They would have roughed her up. If I were there, I may not have survived. And so nobody is safe when these kind of actions continue unabated without accountability. But because they serve a certain political objective for the elements of the state, they're allowed to fester. And I reckon as we go to the next election, you begin to see a more visible presence of this kind of paramilitary, privatized criminal groups working alongside elements of the security agencies.
And we're going to come back to that. But you spoke about formations there. Let me get to Honorable Salam. Honorable, today there was a meeting between the People's Front for Freedom and the Alliance for National Transformation that happened at Africana. What was this all about? Why are the two of you meeting? And what was the outcome of the meeting?
They're all busy.
It's a nice way of looking at it.
Well, it was a conclusion of a long process that we've been engaged with in bringing ourselves together again to pursue what we set out to pursue when we set up 20 years ago. And so what you saw today was a product, not a process. It's a product that is leading us into synergies and into harmonization. And it's a good thing for the country and for all of us. That should have happened earlier, but we've had obstructions, the numerous kidnaps of our members and our leader, the obstruction of the state in all that we do to seek a better pathway for Uganda. Finally paid off into the product we saw today. There's nothing else to write about it. That's what it was and that's what it is. We seek to build a culture of dialogue and a culture of expressing what a democracy operates like. And so it's an opportunity for Ugandans to learn from the action today that it is possible for political entities to find each other and work together. That was the significance of the event today, and its reproduction will be seen as we go along.
Honorable, there has been the Inter-Party Coalition, there has been TDA, United Forces of Change.
Yeah.
What makes this land on firm ground? You said this is
It's because of the people involved. It's the people involved. We have a working history, and our political DNA is the same.
Allow me to put you on the spot. If
Yes.
ANT and PFF won the 2026 general elections,
Yes.
what are you offering?
Our minimum agenda is really transition and bringing back the country onto track, to organize a transition that averts what Nicholas has described. Because what Nicholas describes is really that we are heading for warlordism in this country. Look at Remiaga, look at Tinkasimire, and you will know that all is not well within the NRM. It's not at all. And wait for the primaries. The way it will all pan out is that NRM will end up weaker than all these accolades you're giving to them, because they cannot sustain competition internally. The acrimony that will result out of it will lead us to it being a weakened party, and that weakness will not improve. It will only grow, because you can also tell from the way it is reconfiguring itself is that inside there's a generational war. There's a generational war. You are tired, you are old, we've seen enough of you, instead of it being intergenerational. And so the restlessness of the young people inside the NRM, the longevity of certain personalities within the NRM is becoming a problem inside the party than a resource.
Okay, thank you. Captain Francis Babu,
Sir.
how would you define our political landscape? Hearing all these, I know you have in the cockpit you're seated in right there, the bird's eye view to be able to see what's happening across the different players. How would you define our political landscape as we get into 2026?
Well, we've come a long way, first and foremost. We've come from a long way from 1962 up to now. If you went into the history, you would see all sorts of things. I don't want to go through that. It's very long. Starting from 1952, when we started the political parties in this country. Political parties have had have had a trend, and you can virtually draw it. In 1950s, parties were formed on religious basis. At independence, they went and, you know, parties came together to win an election.
Coalition.
After winning, they all crossed the floor, and where we had a multi-party, we had a one-party state. But that doesn't matter. That's part of our history. We keep on following it. And then, of course, we had the army coming in, and after that, we had all sorts of problems. We went in hibernation, multi-party-wise, until 1980, after the war. After 1980 elections, they crossed the floor again. Same group. So with this ping pong they kept on playing, the parties had a common way of behaving. It's a behavioral problem. So what happened? We ended up with a revolution. A revolution that came out of this is what we have today. In doing so, people were dying for multi-parties again. In fact, I was watching here how parties tried very hard to try and come back. Same groups. By the way, the people they call old were the same groups that started all these problems up to now. They're the same people. If you look at our problem, it has been all the years we've been in this country, it has been the same parties playing the same game with the new, they just changed clothes. It was between UPC and DP until today. By the way, even all these other new parties that have come up, if you look very carefully, they've come from DP and UPC, even now. So, my view is that we have failed to run parties, including the big national party itself. We're having problems running parties. We can't manage them. And because of not managing them, we come up with all sorts of, if you like, they look for little things which they describe. Now, if you take, for example, this problem we're talking about of violence, I have an answer to that. Whenever we go for competitions, all sorts of things come up. One group uses money, another group uses violence, another group uses blackmail, another group uses propaganda. So the groups have different ways of reacting to elections whenever there is competition. But if you took statistics today, how many people in Uganda during these primaries have had problems as compared to those ones who have done it successfully? You'll find that the majority of people in Uganda have done they've done their primaries peacefully, and a few who are in the spotlight, because this is where the newspapers and the international groups are, in Kampala, that's where they normally come to stage this drama, as far as I'm concerned. So, let me start by saying this. We're having problem running our parties. So, my request to all the political class, how can we run our parties so that we can do a good job in making our country have democracy? This is my worry. I'm not going to be worried because of a small group of people putting on yellow shirts and going around beating people. There was another group which were putting on red shirts, who were beating a judge. So it doesn't matter. One today is a yellow shirt, tomorrow is a green shirt, the other day I'm not worried about those shirts. I'm worried about what do I get out of this? I'm getting the answer that we have failed to run our parties, therefore we go for this cheap approach. So once we know what the problems are we, as Ugandans, willing to change our behavior? Because our problem is nothing else but our behavior. It doesn't matter which party. The behavior of some of these people, and they are not many. This is what annoys me. The majority of Ugandans are okay, but you can sit down and virtually take statistics and you will see that there are very few people who do this kind of thing. And they do it to demonize democracy. So if you want us to have a good group, let's sit down and analyze this. And we stop propaganda, stop lying, and stop telling let's tell the truth. What is the problem? Where is the problem? And who are behind this problem? Now, this argument about old and young, I do not agree with it. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter who you are, young or old, either you have the quality to be a leader or you don't have. And I'll give you an example today of a good quality leader who's young, 36 years of age, in Burkina Faso, a president of a country who's doing very well. And I can give you some old people who are also doing very well.
But a president who overthrew an old Turk in the country.
Which one?
In Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso, no, the young man.
Who overthrew the president, the former president? Who was
No. The problem with West Africa, and you must understand the normal democracy cannot change. They've got to use those methods to be able to lead to a democracy. And this has happened to all the West African countries, by the way. So, in this particular case, this young man is proving beyond reasonable doubt that some young people have got the quality of being leaders. And we can also choose some older people who are doing a good job too.
China.
So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to go into this sectarian game. And we have a woman here in Namibia who's doing a fantastic job. We have a young man in Botswana, a new president who's doing very well. So it really depends on us becoming a little bit more disciplined and changing our behavior. I don't mind which group has got a good leader. A leader is a leader, regardless of the group. So, and for example, you are talking about a young soldier, a major, a lady, who was arrested because she tried to be nice. Now, that lady behaved the way NRM used to behave, NRA. That's the NRA I used to know. People would say, no, let's not create problems. Let us try and make things better. So, this major, as far as I'm concerned, I'm told she's been arrested. I would appeal to whoever is concerned to please release this young lady because she made the army proud.
Major Christmas, Auma.
Yeah?
Kisma.
You know, somebody who makes you proud. Now, there are people in this country who really want democracy. It doesn't matter which side of the divide. And it's this group that I am appealing to go back and see what is wrong and try to find an answer to those problems, starting with NRM itself. Something has been quoted about some place where guns were drawn and people became cowboys. That's not the first time this happened in the same place. I've seen that gun before. The question is, why didn't they discipline that people? In fact, my view is that the whole group that is standing in that place should be disqualified. We must set standards. If you cannot behave yourself, disqualify them.
Lastly, Captain Francis Babu, and Honorable Salam talked about it, the place for dialogue and the anarchy that Nicholas is trying to hint on there. Before we even answer that question, what should come before? Should it be the human resource or the ideas? Which one should come before the other?
No, but go first and foremost. Where did all these groups come from?
You already told us, UPC, DP.
No, the present ones. The present ones. They came from a point. For example, we had Young Parliamentarian Association. We had PAFO. We had Reform Agenda. We had FDC. Recently, of course, it was a small problem. And it's a problem that should require dialogue, as far as I'm concerned. Then you also have NRM with all its problems. They've also got their problems. They also need dialogue. So we need experts in these organizations who can sit down and make sure the other people understand that you have to give and take and try to create an organization that is respected. You can't go on collecting money here and being childish there. You've got to understand, if you go into a political party, make it work. And I'll end by saying this. and this is a fact. We have a problem managing institution in this country, not only political parties, across the board. We have a problem with management. And until we can get management going, be it a political party, be it an organization, be it within government, we have a problem with management. And this is where the problem is. The problem is not these little things that happen. Somebody has fought with this one, somebody is calling the other one a name. No, the real thing is to go back. Are we managing these organizations well? And this is going to be the answer to the question you're asking. We should not take simple symptoms which come about. What you're describing here are symptoms. What's the real thing? Everything you talked about is symptom. I look at Madame Musumba. I don't like her because she's got a blue shirt. That's childish. I respect her because of what comes out of her. That is the point we must talk about. Okay. And that is management. Can we manage? And by the way, this management thing is not a joke. It is creating problems in this country everywhere. Be it organizations. It is management. Lastly, we have a problem we have got to solve. Uganda was never a country when the British came here. Mm-hmm. They created it in Berlin. And each of these groups, they were nations. We have never managed to unite them. Mm. And you people sit there and pretend they are united. They are not.
But how long are we going to blame the colonialists for the problems we have?
No. I'm not blaming them. No. You've got me wrong. I say the country called Uganda was not created by us, Ugandans. It was created by the British. There were nations within that country. And those nations have never failed as part of the other. So that's another problem we have. We have to find a solution to that, which Nyerere did in Tanzania. He found a solution to that. He found ujamaa, undugu, and he found a language. He created a state. Have you created a state here where people don't like each other? You still have that problem. You've got to solve that problem. And then you've got to agree. Let me tell you what my view is. Today, the government of Uganda is just a replica of the colonial government. But this is Africans now, ruling a country called Uganda. Mm-hmm. I'd like to end there, then we shall continue after that.
Thank you very much. Captain Honorable Mike Mukula, 40 years of the National Resistance Movement, 2,800 aspirants for 529 slots, less than 15 slots in SEC, over 60 members vying for them. Flowers have been given to you by Nick that seemingly on top, everything seems like it's boiling well. But when we look at the underneath, when we look at Sembabule, Remiyaga, it looks like and we also look at 2021 primaries of the NRM. It's just like we're waiting for an implosion within the party. Why are you still desiring to be in power after 40 years? And what more are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. I think first of all, I agree with Captain Babu. The historical perspective of where we have come from, where we are today, and what faces us as we move forward as a nation. The national resistance movement, I always say, make it very clear, is not a party like my sister's political party. Ours is a revolutionary party. And it is founded, and it was founded out of sweat and blood. So you've got to appreciate the historical perspective of the dynamics of this party with a strategic vision. 40 years in power is a result of the history that characterized the evolution of the new Uganda. And you know that you look at the preamble of our constitution, it was cognizant of and alive to the fact that we had a turbulent history, a violent past, and we are now trying to build and put together a nation which was a failed state. It had literally collapsed. If you look at the economy, the inflation was close to 179%. If you look at the first budget, which was ready in 1987, you saw that it was about 5 billion. Basically, the Uganda shilling had also collapsed. If you looked at the state of infrastructure, number one, national security, we had reactionary forces all over the country. We had West Nile Bank Front in the Rua axis. You had Uganda Rescue Front Part 2 under Bamuze. You had Alice Lakwena, later on Kony of Lord's Resistance Army, Holy Spirit Movement. You had Inteso UPA, Uganda People's Army under the late Peter Tai. You had at the border with Kenya, FOBA, Force Obotebak under the late Agra Wori. Here in Buganda, you had Chirimutu. In Kasese, you had Nalu, and later on, which formed a coalition with the Slav Muslims in Goma and formed ADF. So what I'm telling you is that from that turbulent history, General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and the National Resistance Movement have been able to bring peace to the country, total peace. The Karamoja axis, which is 10% of Uganda's land area, with 11 ethnic groups, almost the size of Rwanda, had close to between 60 to 80,000 guns estimated to be in that axis. When I was with Salam Musumba in Parliament, I moved a motion which took us 2 weeks to cause the disarmament of the Karachuna, the illegal guns. Today, as we talk, nearly 60,000 guns have been recovered. This, if you look at what has been done in 40 years, it's not been a simple journey. You can now see that having brought peace to the country from the north to the south, east to the west, we are now exporting peace to our neighboring countries. We're in Somalia.
Honorable, allow me to jump in there. Let me read your slogans. 96, tackling the tasks ahead. 2001, consolidating achievements. 2006, prosperity for all. 2011, prosperity for all, better service delivery and job creation. 2026, modernity, job creation, inclusive development, securing the future. With all these, when you put yourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, how have you performed in 40 years?
Extremely very well.
You have talked about the
definitely I must say that where we have come from to where we are now, I think we have done very well. Look at it this way. NRM is a mass party. And I've said very clearly, and I want to look at the camera and tell you, that you have now universal, when I talk about mass organization, mass policies, universal primary education, universal secondary education, universal health service delivery,
Honorable, allow me jump in. UPE, 2 million getting in P1, 800,000 finish P7, 400,000 finish S4, 200,000 finish S6, 40,000 leave the university. You don't answer for the difference of 1.7 in there. Health services are only for a few. People have to trek. We still have deaths of mothers giving birth. We seem to be regressing in the last half of your 40 years. Have you really lived up to all these slogans you have put up there?
Have you forgotten? And I want you to add one very important point. That, for example, you're just looking at the indices there. Captain Babu here was the Minister of State for Education. At the ab initio from the introduction of universal primary education, you will definitely note that these children that have now joined UPE are also a result of, and take note, of mass immunization. You can look at, for example, if by 1986 we had 14.2 million people. Today we are heading towards 50 million people. Uganda is among the youngest nations in the world. This demographic balloon is a result of a policy. The point is, when you talk about the internal contradictions in some of these policies or governance of education in schools, health services, this is now where we need to concentrate, and all governments focus on that axis. But look at it this way, and let me switch you to an area which causes transformation of a nation. Uganda, by 1986, our electricity generation in the country was 62 megawatts. 62 megawatts. Only 2 turbines were working. Today we have built 5 major dams and small other dams to support the energy drive in this country. We are now over 2,000 megawatts. That is not a mean achievement for a country. We are now almost at par with Kenya, a country that had been stable and has never had instability in its history. The point I'm trying to tell you is that by 1986, we had close to 1,350 kilometers of tarmac. Today, we are north of 6,000 kilometers of tarmac. If you look at the other achievements which are fundamental, Uganda has maintained economic growth of 6% for the last many years, constant. We are now among the 7th fastest growing economy, not in Africa, but in the world. We are now producing excess of coffee, of tea. We are producing excess of sugar, of milk. And all this, you note, Uganda has got 48% of East Africa's arable land. Our comparative advantage is in agriculture. Have we done well? Extremely well. And that's why I want to answer your question on that response.
Honorable, when I get to the numbers of this budget, they'll say otherwise. But before I get to Professor, what more are you offering Ugandans? 40 years, as the Baganda say, isn't it enough on the dance floor?
You note that by the time we took over power, our income per capita was among the lowest. We're among the lowest in the LDC, least developed. Today, we have gravitated to a middle income status. That tells you that we've also reduced poverty amidst our people. Yes, at the macro level, we're doing extremely very well. The micro is where we are dealing with now. And that's why you want to say that policies like PDM are meant to spur the economy, generate and bring in people into the money economy. This is not a mean achievement. Let me tell you one thing. In these 40 years, it has given us opportunity to achieve some of these major consolidated gains that the country has made. There are countries that have never seen peace for a long time. We thank the Lord that Uganda has remained peaceful. And with that ingredient of peace and stability, we can now path a way to ensure that we can improve on our democratic path, we improve on the economy, stabilize social economic transformation of this country, and ensure that we have a nation that is moving forward. That is what we need to focus on.
Let me bring in Professor. Professor, 2 young people, Agaba vying for the chairmanship of the NRM, Chiwanuka vying for the presidency there. Mm-hmm. This impasse between the young and old, Captain Francis Babu has said, it is not really a conversation, but it's if 75% of this population in this country is under 35, mm-hmm. and as Nick said, the 1% is running the 99%. Where does this leave us as a country, especially if you begin to hear young voices, look at the demographic of the 11th Parliament, look at the demographic of the people in the councillors, and also the ones who are vying? What does it mean for the youth and the old in this country?
Thank you, Timothy. In my view, I don't think there's very much of a threat. I think what we are experiencing or observing is what would normally occur. If you have a population which is predominantly younger people, and these younger people are also not gainfully employed, and also other people are seeing or perceiving politics as a form of employment. So it's just natural that younger people also seek to go there. So I wouldn't read it as a serious or threatening thing. It is what happens when populations are like that. So if you have Honorable Abbas and the Katongole picking nomination forms, I don't think this is very much out of the way. They must have taken the freedoms of expression within the NRM seriously, and so they decided to pick the papers. So the younger people are restless, and I think they are restless because they are not gainfully employed. But otherwise, most of the younger people who are outside these circles are actually in villages, trying to dig, trying to make a living, whether through pool or through trade. So the young people are gainfully employed. They are not gainfully employed, but they are engaged in activities elsewhere. And of course, beyond the leadership and those who picked papers, you have many younger people are going to participate in the election as either supporters of candidates, agents of candidates. My appeal to them is just not to be very violent when this happens, because people can get very zealous and they decide to try and push the elections in a particular way. The other thing we are likely to see, because there are so many younger people in, is we are likely to see a lot of social media activism. These are things which have not always been there, but for the last 3 elections, they came to color the elections. The kind of social media activism, of course there's X, there's Facebook is minimal, but there's X, there's WhatsApp statuses, and younger people are very quick with these gadgets. So what are we likely to see them do? And of course, as younger people, they are tired of people who look like they have a cult-like identity over the country. So younger people are arriving with new identities, which in general life don't sit comfortably with the older generation, even outside politics. So that could be another thing. But of course, many younger people might be apathetic in that, and it comes from taking the benefits of a peaceful country for granted, that people wonder why, if I vote, what is going to happen? There's nothing going to happen whether I vote or I don't vote. And many younger people, unfortunately, exhibit these kinds of voter apathy, but also the whole aspect of distrust of systems, distrust of institutions within those systems, distrust of the judiciary, distrust of the EC, because also the other characteristics that younger people come with, it is either their way or there's no way. So if it is not their way, then everything else is wrong. So we are going into an election where, as Nicola says, 75% of people are very young, of the voters are going to be very young. It's going to be an interesting dynamic for those who observe the elections. Of course, for the other many positions, I've been following a number of friends and a number of our students. People are running for mayoral positions, others are running for MP positions, very young people who graduated like 2 years ago. They are running for all these positions. So it's not just the top which they have gone for, they're just, it's like these are the available slots to get them gainfully engaged, and they're going for them. So, but going into them, we're also trying to see whether actually the younger people who are voters are going to support the younger people who are politicians or who are vying as aspirants for these positions. Or are the younger people who are voters simply interested in singing praises for the older tax vis-a-vis their own? So we want to see whether actually that will be there. But it's going to be an interesting election. I don't think there's going to be much doom and gloom and collapse and things like that. So that is it.
And you speak about the young people, but let's look at it in a wider spectrum. We have been here, discussed unemployment, we have been here, discussed agriculture, looked at also the U-boat statistics that are alarming, especially for young people who are involved in. Why has politics become the most gainful place for employment? And how can we really get it from selfishness to service?
Well, I wouldn't say it's selfish. I think whoever is engaged in the political process assumes they are in it to offer a service. But why has politics become the thing? It's because the one thing which is very predictable. It occurs every 5 years. It is statutorily provided for. You can plan for it well in advance and prepare for it. So if a younger person graduated and doesn't have a job for 5 years, they will literally look to politics. Whether they will win or not win is a different matter. But they are looking to it. And I know many of the younger people that I'm observing are not even going for the parliamentary positions. They are going for positions of councillors at districts. They are going for LOC3. They are going for mayorship positions. A few of them who are very courageous are going for the MP positions. But because they have become a little bit complex and expensive, many are playing at a level that is below that. So why is it they go to? One, because as I said earlier, many younger people are not gainfully employed. So politics offers both the opportunity to run for a position, and if you can secure it, well and good, it can guarantee your livelihood. But other than those who are running, politics is also the place where many younger people are playing an active role. If you look at those demographics, who is on the tracks, who are the agents, who are singing, who are praising, it is all younger people. And for most of them, actually, it's not just free. A few of them volunteer, but the majority are being paid for it. So it's one way to be very, very engaged. And if you can have a windfall, depending on which party you join, where there's money, and you have a windfall, then you can live off that or invest it as you prepare and wait for another 5 years. And it's interesting when you talk to some of the people, they actually anticipate and wait for the 5 years religiously, okay? Wow. Knowing that while this year I must make this out of the process, chances are that I will not be gainfully employed for another 4 years, and I wait for them in the next.
Nick, lastly, before we even read some of these messages, when you look at June 3rd in Munyonyo, the bombing, you look at Kalerwe, you look at the intrigue that has come through intelligence now, finger pointing, people getting arrested, but also you look at Kawempe North by-election, especially the mayhem that was surrounded there. You go back and look at the beatings that have been there in the past elections. How secure is this election, and who benefits from any form of violence that might come out of it?
Let me just say a few words
in
response to what Prof has said. Why young people are all running into politics. It is the natural byproduct of the patronage system that has ballooned the amount of money involved in politics. It's just corruption. People don't go into it for public service, but for sustenance, because we have pushed all our resources in the political class. The best paid part-time job in this country, highest paying, is being an MP. I can be an MP but run my law firm. I go to parliament as a part-time job. Who wouldn't want that job for 30 million shillings a month? The political class is hogging a vast majority of our resources, and everybody wants to go there and join that sort of, jamboree. And so I think for me that's why many people are running into politics, because there's no space for it in the private sector. People can't make money. The vast majority of manufacturing companies in this country are foreigners. Each time you see President Museveni at Namamve launching an industrial thing, rarely do you see him with Ugandans. He's like a lapdog to Chinese, Turkish, Asians, offering manufacturing infrastructure and exploiting young people in this country. And so that's why many people think the only way to do is join the big tent and eat. But to your question, I have said this here before, that you cannot have a peaceful election unless you deal with the previous election, the violence of the previous election. Because the very same people who on the streets of Kampala extrajudicially killed innocent Ugandans, some of them were protesting. If you don't deal with that, the people feel emboldened, they will do the same thing again. Many of those guys were promoted. We documented them, we profiled them. Many of the people who have disappeared, young people from this country, because they thought they were in the service of the state, have not been held to account. So the standard is so low that anything goes. I don't think that unless you address the question of impunity arising from the violence in the last election, you cannot have a peaceful election. President Museveni himself admitted to his soldiers killing people on the streets. I sat with families of those individuals. Many of them were killed in point blank, targeted shooting, not stray bullets, shot in the middle of their eye, in the back of their head, on their chest. Those are not stray bullets. Before my arrest, there were 158 families I'd spoken to. People who were killed in 2 days between the districts of Luka and Masaka. So Luka, Iganga, Jinja, Mukono, Buikwe, Kampala, Kayunga, Masaka. So you can see, unless you address that problem, you're not going to. And Kawempe is a typical example. The people who have visited mayhem in Kawempe were instead praised. None, to my knowledge, has been held to account. The only person who is suffering from that, who I know, is the UPDF soldier that Honorable talked about, who is in detention since Kawempe for doing the simple patriotic act of stopping her colleagues from beating fellow Ugandans who are expressing themselves or protesting something. And so we must deal with the question of impunity. Unless you raise the cost of impunity, those who use impunity as a means to gain state power will find it very, very, very helpful in their pursuit for office. Those who benefit from it will always think, if I beat up people, I'll catch the eye of my boss and I might get promoted. Many of them are in the security services. We know them, we have documented them. Been promoted, given new ranks.
Thank you very much. Let me read some feedback that has come from you. Good evening, Timothy. Ask Captain Mukula, if there is peace in this country, how come we see leaders even at the district level moving with convoys? I have fairly moved across the country, across the continent. Can he tell me any other country with the same number of sirens and convoys like ours? Are our leaders not entitled to peace dividends that they have graciously donated to us? This is Benjamin in Kampala. Okay. Uganda is a very amazing country. When it comes to democracy, just imagine NRM ruling party printing one form for a party chairperson and a presidential flag bearer. That's Chakala, very interesting there. Quite lengthy, Jabalo Bua from Apache says, good evening, Timothy, thank you for the show. 2026 elections won't be very different from what we have witnessed before. My issue is the small positions being fought for, making innocent poor citizens lose their lives. Lastly, our Uganda needs a reset to transit power from the top 1% who are old and tired and to the 99% that are at the bottom. All those in the studio need to answer this question, especially for the next 10 years, what does this country look like? We also need the NRA in 1986 to stop thumb-chesting about the past and start talking about where we are and what the future looks like. That's because power is sweet, it's hard to leave. The core values of the NRM are supposed to stay, not with just the people that are with them, okay? Simon says, politics in Uganda has been marred by corruption. People join politics to amass wealth. Leaders are not patriotic at all. Nobody, including the heads of state, respect the rule of law. The incoming elections will not avail much. No positive development are expected. The same thing will exist. No new ideas. This is Simon. Thank you very much, Simon. Lastly, this is Tobias. Tobias says, Timothy, thank you for the panel, especially having Honorable Salam Musumba there. The opposition in Uganda has failed miserably to organize themselves compared to the NRM party. Honorable Musumba, how do you hope your PFF and anti-union on one hand and NUP, FDC, Najana Nkumbi, UPC, DP on the other hand to beat the NRM? The above is what I am inquiring about. This is he's in Eswati in South Africa there. Thank you very much for watching. This is Tobias Kamgisha. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have responses on what the solutions are, especially if we don't want our country to get into anarchy.
Here's your chance to win school fees for your child for a whole year. Just pay school fees using Momo. star 165 star 80 hash. Select option 2 for school pay. Select option 1 to pay school fees. Enter the student number and amount and approve the transaction. You will now enter the draw to win school fees for your child for a whole year.
Uniquely ours. Explore Uganda.
You got us on your wallet. Bobby, again! What's this drama?
Drama? Colleagues, elections for special interest groups are calling. SIGs, elections. Youth, PWDs, elderly. It's time to vote for our leaders. June through August. From village to parish to district to nationals. Youth, PWDs, elderly. It's time, go vote your leaders.
No!
Elections are supposed to be peaceful. Easy vote, okay?
Youth, elderly, and persons with disabilities. It's time to choose our leaders. Let's show up and participate in the special interest group elections. Starting June through August this year. Your vote, your voice. My vote, my voice. This message is brought to you by the Uganda Electoral Commission.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines as we get into the last leg of the show. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. I'm joined by Professor Sarah Sadi, Counsel Nicholas Opio, Honorable Proscovia Salam Musumba, Honorable Captain Edward Francis Babu, and Honorable Captain Mike Mukula. And we're discussing everything elections, especially looking at the expressions and the nominations and the primaries about to kick off. Now we're going to be talking about the generalities of the electoral process, what it looks like, but also how can we deter a country from falling into a place of where we wouldn't desire for it to be. Let me read two messages and come to Honorable Salam Musumba. Thank you, Timothy. The road to 2026 is worse than before because it is a high chance that live bullets will be available. The political ground now where everyone else goes to feed their families with greed to die, and the elections have become a do or die. I was in one of the outside countries where something like this happened and someone abused power, a friend that he was stupid and greedy, and Ugandans call themselves liberators. My eyes are silently open for the statement. There is no peace as long as we keep the country as poor as it is. NRM came with demons, destroyed them, stole and killed, looted, and what happened to the country? UPE for nothing, UCE for nothing. Thank you, Fred. Quite lengthy message there. NRM would have been a good party, but the problem is that the rampant corruption in the NRM. Ministers have resorted to pouring out money during campaigns when there are no drugs in health facilities. This is James from Kanungu. Okay, keep the messages coming. Let me get to Honorable Salam Musumba. Honorable, yes. Should I start from where you started during the break, the country that these people seem to be living in, and you're wondering if it's the same country?
Well, where I come from, Busoga, is a very sad story of regression. When I compare Busoga under Obote and Busoga under Museveni, they are polar opposites. And I keep, when I listening into the panel, I wonder, where do I live in another country where all these things are being reeled off? The disparities in incomes, the disparities in opportunity, the disparity in administration. you would think we are at the fringes of our geography, that maybe we live in Nimule, that we are far off from the center. And yet we produce the electricity that has powered this country since 1954. How come we produce this and we do not, our region is not developed to give political goodies to the citizens? The majority of the people in Busoga support NRM, and yet they're the poorest. So what is their bulk support for? And you know, they've fixed it. That's why you see, whenever they're talking about violence, they start in Luuka. I'm sure you wouldn't have known Luuka if it wasn't for that violence. I keep the gate of Luuka. Mine is the last village in the district, Namwendwa. And so, Luuka looks like the backyard of Uganda. So, I try to make sense about this entire situation and try to describe it in English, but it can only best be described in Lusoga. There's no English equivalent of what's going on with our lives and how our lives have been ruined as an economic empire in the 1960s that powered the growth of a country, being in ruin right now and a laughingstock of the country. So, fixing the politics will fix the fortunes. And that's why I like to be tribalistic. I'm a Msoga. And please don't try to make me feel bad about being a Msoga. If you're not, then what are you? Be proud of who you are. I'd like us, and what we're working up is to reset this country on the right foundation of the 15 regions that united to form a country called Uganda, and be able to reset ourselves. You will not force us to think alike. The last week I was watching the Balalo debate, and I was so happy that people are beginning to speak the truth. You know, the people virtually thought that by joining NRM, you know, that they were securing their future. They weren't. The war in northern Uganda has not ended. It has only changed, it permutated. You see? And they thought that they could, like the young people think that you join them, if you can beat them, you join them. No, they'll swallow you. And that's what is happening to Acholi. Just in case you didn't know, I'll tell it to you raw, that they're stalking you, they're stalking your resources, and that you're not ready. You let down the guard. And so did we in Busoga. If you were to look at the land distribution there, the land use, the natural resource use, the lake belongs to the military. All the water sources belong to the military. People have been thrown out of livelihoods. They have burnt their boats, they have burnt their nets, and they've not replaced them. It is a desperate situation that can only be described in Lusoga. In English, there's no equivalent. There's no equivalent. The pain that households suffer, that they've made peace with poverty. And it's the same for Buganda. Buganda economy is here with all the fertile land. The best they do is to sell ndagala, banana leaves. You know, even the coffee, the crop that made them has been attacked. You go to Western, tea, they're selling tea at 200 shillings a kilo. You go to Bushenyi, the farmers there have been beaten into silence, but they're suffering 200 shillings per kilo of tea leaves. You can imagine what the volume of leaves to make a kilo. You know, the volume of leaves, and they go for 200. People's economies have collapsed because of the price. You go to the milk industry too. The people of Kazo will not complain because it's too ashaming, it's their government. Don't complain. Their milk is being taken on credit. And they're paid when the guys want. It's like Madivan pays people when he wants. So these economic distortions that they describe as success is betrayal to ourselves. Because this is the only country I call home. And we who know and who should organize society are using figures as a cover-up. As a cover-up. I mean, where do you live? These glossy figures. You know, glossy figures on glossy paper that have no meaning. So they're disconnecting society. They watch us on TV and they can't make sense of us. The ordinary person has no relationship with the center. I was a chairman of a district. I wish Captain Babu and Captain Mukula would offer service and be district chairpersons so that they can live the experience of the so-called success they claim to have made. The resources are all eaten at the center. What trickles down in the where 80% of the population lives is 14%. And nobody wants to reset that. This country only belongs to the military. There is no, of the 15 nations that formed this country, none of them has a stake, has a place on the table. It's the military. When did Uganda become the military? There's no citizenship. I'm not a citizen. I'm an opponent. I'm an opponent of who? I can't be an opponent of my own country. So these gross distortions that we all suffer and fail to describe and find solutions to is what we must deal with.
And following just what you said, the 15 regions that came together to have this.
Yes.
There are undertones there and very strong sentiments.
Yes.
About.
Yes.
Let's put it as bluntly as it is.
Raw.
In Acholi, the land is on contestation. Professor Latigo was here last week and talked about.
It's not even contestation. The land is being stolen. They'll tell you that somebody who has pitched camp there needs 2 trailers to bring back the land titles he has acquired.
And talking about them, how do we have such a sensitive conversation to pull this country together before it tears itself apart? And who leads this conversation?
Well, it will lead itself.
That's not possible.
The conversation will lead itself.
A vacuum can't lead itself.
Oh, they are. You see, the leaders of Acholi seem to have abandoned their people in the quest for land security. They got co-opted into the Andianabo, the eating class. And so the population realized that they were on their own, and so they used the means available to them to say it raw, the way Professor said it raw.
How do we have a conversation with these 15 regions?
Let's first have a conversation with ourselves before you even talk about conversation, because on that table, it is an in-house introspection of those 15 regions that then we will bring our different layers of dissatisfaction onto the table. But everybody is trying to be politically correct. I mean, you first start with hearing, oh, the Bagandas have organized. So what? We, the Basogas, should organize because our resources are being lost in the melee of political discussion. Who has command over the lake, that part of between Mijingo and Buvuma that belongs to us? Which Musoga knows what is there? If you went to Jinja, the land ownership has changed. You will find no Musoga. It's not that I am a villager, which I am. But these things must be said the way they are. The entire River Nile that entire River Nile, all the land on the east bank has been taken over violently. Populations have been displaced. The whole of Lake Choga is silted. It's now barren. And there's no program whatsoever. Instead, we hear that there's a nuclear plant in the Buyende. And somebody talks about it like they're doing us a favor. I mean, we have been displaced.
Okay.
And that's not a joke. And let nobody try to tell me that it's okay, because it's not. I am talking about an area that I fully understand. I am sure it is worse in Bukedi. It is worse in Elgon. When you go there, in Elgon, the slopes of the mountain, the industrial parks, you know, the national park.
In Karamoja is even worse.
I mean, in Karamoja, their resources are taken out every day and sends kids begging. And the best that can happen is to arrest them. Arrest them.
Thank you, Honorable. Captain Francis Babu, you really did this to the rug, and the conversation is getting there. So
Yes.
let's take it there.
I'm happy.
And the President has talked about 3 strategic areas: strategic security, prosperity, undugu, which some of them you talk about. But how does Uganda win at the end of the day?
Uganda is a country whose population has been increasing. If you go back, by the time NRM came here, we're talking about nearly 12 million. We are now at about 46 million. Whenever a population increases, there is going to be pressure on resources. No matter what you say, no matter what magic you play, there's going to be resources. These resources, people are going to run after them. And when you add in that nice word, corruption, it becomes even much more interesting. So let's look at the population of this country, and let's look at the resources, and let's look at the land tenure systems we've had from the time of independence up to now. Whose tenure systems were they? Where did they come from? Most of our local people here used to use customary land tenure system. Until the British came with their system, because they wanted to make money to run the administration, and they came up with this new land tenure system. It is there. This land tenure system, what was the population then? Talking about 6 million? 9 million? What is it now? We're talking about 46 million. What do you expect? Pressure on the land, pressure on the resources, pressure on forests, pressure on wetland. So when you're talking about this, let us become a little bit more seriously. The bit which is being described by my sister is that little bit of these guys who have got a little bit of corruption and money, and therefore takes advantage of the situation.
It's mega corruption.
I'm coming. It doesn't matter whether you call it industrial. Yeah. My friend calls industrial corruption. It doesn't matter. But corruption is corruption. You can give it any adjectives you like. But as far as I'm concerned, the population of this country has increased, and our management of our economy is not the best, and therefore we are having this problem. When you talk about smuggling, for example, of this kind of economy, in this modern era, one must sit down and think about the management. Again, I go back to management. Is the management of our economy up to standard? And therefore, are we finding ourselves in a situation where we cannot control it because of that mega? My sister called it a very big economy. Let's call it mega. Let's call it whatever you like, a corruption of some sort. And who are corrupt. Now, I wanted us to be very, very clear that the leadership of this country, regardless of where it comes from, this is the area where the problem is. the economy of this country, the resources of this country, how to manage them and how to control them so that they can benefit this nation. To do that, you need people who have got the ability to do so. This takes me back. Where are those people who can do this kind of work? Who has mentored them? Who are they? In the olden days, and I'm coming back to this, very, very important, our local chiefs, our kings, our chiefs, used to know where each home was and what sort of people they had. And they would go on leadership drive. They would look for leaders to come and run those kingdoms. In fact, when the British came here, they said they had never seen Africans in the interior of Africa who had such good kingdoms and good political groups. Why? Because they had mentored leadership. My question to all of you who talk a lot, who have you mentored? We said we should have civic education in the Constitution, never took off. It is dead and buried. We need to bring up these leaders. All these people talk about youth. I have never seen them mentor these youth to take up leadership. They only talk. There are so many youth, there are so these, no. Have you helped them? Have you helped them and put them in the line of becoming the leaders of this country? Has any of these parties gone on leadership drive, whereby they are looking for leaders to enter into their parties, or they are waiting there as if it is a marketplace for anybody who turns up and wants to be a leader?
Well, NRM has imported.
As far as I'm concerned, and this is very, very serious, I am sorry I had to go there to take you back and tell you that leadership needs very strong people in those parties. But the parties have two things they have to do. One, they have to give us a program. Two, they've got to give us good leaders. I want you to go back home, all of you, the youth, everybody. Have they given us good leaders? How much of that do they? Can you say out of 10 that they've done it so well? Now, these are things we must be talking about. I think we tend to talk about mistakes and things that have gone wrong, and we don't talk about things that can put them right. And this is why I'm saying, when I was young, by the way, I wanted to tell you, I was also young one time.
I know. Youth. I remember you.
You have a tendency to think I was born old.
I remember you. Very young.
Let's put it. Now, when I was young, $1 was 7 shillings. $1 was 7 Uganda shillings. A pound was 20 Uganda shillings. And 20 Uganda shillings, you went to the bank and they gave you a British pound. You went with the 7 shillings, they gave you $1. A few years later now, we're talking about $1 of 3,600 shillings. When I started working...
And a pound of 5,000.
Yes. When I started working, a graduate from Makerere University would get 802 pounds a year. 802 pounds. Now you multiply that by 20 shillings those days.
And the car cost how much?
Oh, a car was about 10 the one I bought a BMW, by the way, when I became a pilot, you know. But these people think that we've never been young. We have been there.
We know.
And the best nightclub in Nairobi was called 1900. But anyway, let's go to this one. What is important here, and it's very important, is that our economy from the time we got independence up to now, and the population has increased, we've got to find the numbers to do it correctly. And to do that, we don't need mediocres, we don't need propaganda, we need people who can put it right. So after said and done, I want to end up by saying this. The other day, you remember people were talking about wetlands? People's houses being broken and all that?
Yes.
Nobody ever stopped to tell you that the population had increased, that even where they had dry land, there wasn't enough space. So these people had to go in the wetlands. Have you ever answered that question? Nobody has answered it. So these are things that we've got to talk about. And here is where you need good management. Fair management across the board.
Okay.
And if you don't get that one, you will not be able to answer the question she's talking about. The 15 sub-regions. Oh, I like that when she said it. I felt very excited about it. When you are talking about it, you're talking about decentralization, you shouldn't have gone to districts, you should have gone to those 15. Given them enough resources and let them run the different areas. Now, we need a system that can put us together and a system that can fight all these symptoms which are not desirable and make this country a better country to stay in again. We need a renaissance. We need a rebirth.
Thank you. Honorable Mike Mukula, when you look at the national resistance movement that you call a mass party, what is its plan of continuity? One, but also two, how are these joint campaigns going to happen? Because the primaries are about to happen. Even you, both as an incumbent and an aspirant, it's joint campaigns. If we look at an area like Remiaga, where today Dr. Tango Doi was supposed to have a meeting with both Honorable Sechikubo and Brigadier General Rashande, how is it, what is continuity for you as the NRM? But also, secondly, how are these joint campaigns supposed to happen?
First of all, before I respond to the questions you have raised, let me put a bit of touch on what my sister Salam Musumba has been lamenting on, the lamentations of Salam Musumba.
Thank you.
You know, I have one thing that I want you to understand. When you are in the opposition and you are in government, a government is like a big hill or mountain. All you do is that even if they close your eyes and they give you a stone, all you need to do is point the direction. You'll never miss it. Meaning that it's easy to throw stones. But the act of running the state is different. Let me hasten to add one very important point. What we are talking about is what Captain Babu was responding to, dealing with the social economic transformation with the ballooning population. If you look at Uganda, and I want you to understand one very important thing. We have a fertility rate of about 6.1. It was 6.7 recently, 6.8. It's now 6.1. A population growing at 3.2%. And I also wanted to note that a fertility rate of 6.1 means every woman, every female is estimated to have at least 6 children. What does that translate to? And I want you to give the facts which you can check from you, boss. 80% of our population is below the age of 30, young. Uganda is one of the youngest nations after, I think, Niger, Chad. 55% of our population is below the age of 16. 0 to 16 is consumptive, dependent, does not contribute to the economy, and they are just dependent. Now, this is the result of what Captain Babu was talking about, the demographic pressure on the economy, on the social services, on schools, health care, and so on and so forth. Because you have a young population that is consumptive and dependent, as I've elucidated. That's one point. You also got to note that in order for you to fight corruption, you must deal with production and distribution. It cannot be by word like it were in the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, let there be, and it was. It can't be fought like that. And you cannot read Uganda in isolation of the African continent. You cannot. Look at South Sudan, look at Chad, look at the DRC Congo. DRC Congo, a nation which is 11 times the size of Uganda, 91 times the size of Rwanda, potentially one of the richest countries in the world, is a poor country, much poorer than Uganda. And yet in terms of mineral wealth, DRC Congo has got all the 14 major minerals, including oil. Well, now, you go further to the West African countries, and see a country that you can say that is much higher in terms of its status, incomes, and so on, than Uganda. So let's come back home and read the equation and the dynamics of our social economic base in with the reality. I want to tell you that the highest fertility rates in this country are in the areas of Busoga. Now, you also need to note that in Busoga, one of the challenges, because I come from the east, my family is partly married in Busoga. You will see that land fragmentation. 2, lands for production, because land is part of a tool of production. You get these, what you call the sugar cartels, leasing land at 500 shillings per year, 500 shillings, 100,000, 500 shillings per 5 years, 1 acre, for 5 years, meaning 100,000 per year, per annum. And they take away that land and put avocado, sugar cane. This is the challenge you have now, that the people have been deprived of land, and the cartels, the sugar cartels, have taken away the land for production. That's what she's talking about. And this is a fact. I want you to note, therefore, that we now need to deal with not just the symptoms, but the cause of the problem. So I want really to say that in order for us to be analytical and to be factual, let's deal with the formations on the ground and tackle them.
And that's where I want to ask you, because we're now looking for solutions. You talked about 55% between 0 and 16. In 20 years, they'll be the working force. How prepared are you for them?
Now, that is the point. Let me even tell you more. And you should be worried about this. Between today, a child born today, and 4 years, is 8 million Ugandans. Between today, born today, and 4 years is 8 million. The age above 80 is 284,000 people, meaning that we have an inverted pyramid. The demographics show you that this intergenerational governance of a nation called Uganda has got more younger people, and their pressures, their demands are growing per day. That's why you find that almost the same problems are inherent in most African countries. 60% of the population of Africa is below the age of 25 years. Now, this you need to relate and check. The pressures you see in Kenya with the Gen Zs in the streets, the pressures you see of our people in Burkina Faso taking over government, the Sahel, the Arab Spring, is the pressures we are talking about. And that's why you find that you need to focus on dealing with not just the symptoms, but the cause of the problem. Now, I want the population, our people, to understand that if you fail to bring in good governance and maintain stability in a country, this is what happens in countries like like countries like Sudan, Khartoum.
But
so how to deal with the problem?
Yes.
And that you're talking about providing solutions. You have people who have read books, and we have the Minister of Planning. You have what you call the Vision 2040. And these ingredients that are meant to spur the economy, grow, and deal with the ballooning population are all encased in the Vision 2040. And each political party, and I want to say each political party, comes in with a manifesto. A manifesto is a social contract between the party and the people. And that's what makes people win the elections. NRM has got a duty to maintain power. And I've said it before, that power is for keeping. Power is for keeping.
But Honorable, let's get to the social issue you're talking about. The NDP4 asked for a particular amount, about 4.1 trillion shillings. your budget for this year is short of 1.2 trillion shillings to the same ATMs that you're talking about are going to be transformation. So are you really providing solutions, or you're just holding on to power?
It's not holding on to power. Let me tell you, when you look at our tax to GDP ratio, we're still below 14%. And when you look at the pressures on the economy, budgetary pressures, countries around us, there are countries like Kenya that are close to 21%. Countries like Tanzania are slightly higher. Countries like Rwanda and Burundi are lower. The point is that you need, in order for you to balance your expenditure, you must balance income and expenditure. Now, you've also got to rationalize the cost of money that you borrow. Our debt equity ratio is at now about 51, 52%. Countries that have overborrowed, like Kenya, which are above north of 70%, are now suffering. So you've got to make sure that you're frugal in managing the economy, at the same time balancing social economic needs of our country. The point is that we need to increase production in order for us to ensure that the value chains of our economy plow back to building capacity in these institutions that we call the institutions of that will help people, health centers, service delivery, schools, roads. But the focus has been of government infrastructure, because in order for you to balance, and I've said this before, production and distribution, you must have road infrastructure, you must have water for production and consumption, you must have good and reasonable health services. And that's what you're talking about, the mass approach. Understand one underpinning point. Uganda is still part of the developing countries. How do you term yourself as developing? By addressing the issues that concern your people. And that's why Article 1 of the Constitution now demands for the people to choose the leaders as they so wish. And this is what you call regular democratic processes.
Honorable, before I come to Professor, I need you to respond to joint campaigns that the NRM is going to be running, but also the question of continuity.
We today agreed that first the elections of the members of parliament will be internal democracy, will be on the 17th. Because on the 16th, we're going to hold elections of people with disabilities. But the point I'm trying to tell you is that we want joint campaigns so that the issue of money, the commercialization of campaigns in the country is avoided. They go as colleagues and have what you call barazas, address the people in one common point and elucidate on the points or intentions of each individual to ensure that you have a healthy and democratic process within the party. That is critical point number one. Point number two is that you also want to try as much as possible to avoid the acrimony that is normally accompanied by these competitions. These acrimonious campaigns in the past, which entailed people going out on their own barazas without particularly paying attention to the divide, the fallout, people becoming permanent enemies. And sometimes now moving to point number three, where you
tested this anywhere before? Because it looks like it is being tested for the first time.
We did that under individual merit. Salam Musumba knows it.
Yes,
Captain Babu, remember?
We did that.
We did that.
As individual
And what were its successes?
Very successful. There was no fallout. Captain Babu.
The Constituent Assembly was elected on the candidates meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
also the
one of the things that
1996.
he did actually, and I thought was very, very nice, is that we didn't have this fighting and fighting different groups and all that. We all came together and each candidate spoke. He was given enough time. And actually at the end of the day, the choice of our Constituent Assembly, in my opinion, was very good.
The maturity of the politics then and the maturity of the politics now is a whole different story.
I don't know.
Made by who?
Look at Remiaga and give it as an example.
No, but why do you always create Remiaga? There are other places that have had problem. You've become obsessed with Remiaga.
It's not Remiaga, it's the hot spots that can turn this country upside down.
No, these are isolated cases. You do not mar the whole process, which has been over 95% peaceful by Remiaga and maybe one or two others.
Remiaga seems to have...
2021 primaries?
No, that was the history.
Has Remiaga become an OPM now? Because everybody is talking Remiaga. This is not first time that guy has used that gun. We've seen it before. It's the person, not even intended. The actors have done that before.
Why are they the constants?
It's the
why
character.
Is it the character of Remiaga? Why?
No, but
and you know, you have even failed to fix that.
Not failed.
My sister.
What have you done? Postponed fixing it?
Honorable.
No. By the way, I like to thank her. NRM at one time had people who were misbehaving, and as rebels, and actually tried to stop it, and they went to court, and the courts of Uganda said no. These are people's people. So what the speaker did, he got a special area for them to sit in. It shows you that something was being done, but it was short-circuited, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
I could also tell you that one of the things that we have talked about now, in order to avoid acrimonious engagements during the campaigns, is to see that we have tribunals where you have where you have acrimonious engagements like those in Remiaga. We are setting up tribunals, and that under our guidelines, I think number 47 or 57 of the party, we are going to, it is commissioned under the president, the chairman of the party. We're going to set up these tribunals all over the country. There will be a national one also. 2, we're also going to constitute what you call disciplinary committees. And these disciplinary committees will be able to manage people who are errant. Where there is indiscipline, these committees will be able to tackle them in the most democratic way possible, and to ensure that they use the law. Where somebody has gone wrong, they will definitely be found culpable for some of the challenges or some of the issues that will be raised. The point I want to tell you is that we have a young population, not experienced, very aggressive, and I want to tell you that the only way you can do that is to try to bring in ways and means of containing some of this misbehavior. And tribunals, disciplinary committees are normal in all democratic practices in the world.
Thank you.
By the way,
yes,
you people stop taking our points we're going to use in our parties to be elected. You are now bringing them here. These are the points I'm going to be using to campaign.
We are sharing with them with the country.
So now,
come on.
Now the point I want to make here, and very clearly,
yes,
I disagree with you that the young people are aggressive. No, a few. A majority of young people know what they want. Most of them are more educated than what we were, and there is a few of them who are. So let us not give the wrong impression to our young people that they are aggressive. No, a few of them are, the majority of them are not. And by the way, they reason more than some of us. And some of us saying, if I have children, I am making better men than myself. So I do not agree with this notion that young people are aggressive. I disagree. I am one of those who say some of them are very good and some of them can be very good leaders.
Okay, thank you. Professor, how should the population be prepared for this general election? Especially primaries are coming, the same population is going to be called into the primaries, the same population is going to be called into the general elections. How should they be prepared, and how do you see them responding?
Okay. First and foremost, I would like to conclude on the issue of younger people. I think the whole issue of younger people vis-a-vis older people is a mindset which is just driven.
Yes.
And I know that mindset has always been driven by external factors who think younger people can be mobilized for regime change. And that's why there are so many scholarships for younger people to go and come back and be the transformers of society. So the young people are permanently being told they are the future of this country, they have the numbers, they should take charge of their destiny, they cannot leave it to younger people. And interestingly, those who give out that kind of, who are pushing that narrative and that agenda, are ruled by 70-plus-year-old people in their countries. So that is one thing. So it is true that we have a demographic, and given our economics, many of people with that demographic, as well as other demographics of being women or being rural people, are excluded from that economy. That has to be addressed, but not just drawing this distinction that they're younger people and they're older people, because at what point is one a younger person and one is an old person? I think that's another thing that should be debunked. But then your question is, how is the population being prepared? When I move around this country, I think the population is very ready. People started political mobilization for this election, like last year or before last year. People have been attending these functions, attending these weddings. So the people on the ground are actually prepared. They are minting off these people. Churches are going up. Schools are going on. Weddings are being held. Everyone is marrying in this week towards the primaries. If you look at the weddings lined up in rural areas towards the 17th of July, everyone's marrying around that, particularly those who are picking on as agents. So people are ready, and they are seeing this as the windfall. So maybe it's people in Kampala who are not really into the thing. But up-country people are already politically mobilized.
The reason I'm asking you the question is a journalist friend of mine just did a survey.
Yes.
And went around to rallies asking.
Yes.
About 30 people in a rally. Say Nick was in Gulu campaigning. And this person just asked them, what did Nicholas say? And they said, the man spoke. And gave us money.
Yes.
At what point do we get to the priorities and the issues that are really the pinpoints or the pain points?
Yeah, Timothy, many times, I think since 2016, one of the things we have always been doing is to track the discourse around elections. When you listen to many of the people who are campaigning, they actually have something they're standing for. They're talking about social services, they're talking about water, they're talking about roads, they're talking... Whether they will win or not win is a different matter. But people are presenting these manifestos. And I know when we finish the NRM primaries and we go full blast national, you're going to see people having these whatever. So whether the population...
Are they individual manifestos or institutional manifestos?
You see, there are different levels of manifestos. Of course, when you talk at presidential level, they're going to be articulating the manifesto of the party. But at lower level, like parliament, mayors, and the rest, people are articulating what their leadership will do for the community. So those are individual manifestos at that level.
Very distorted.
Yes, it
totally
might,
distorted.
You may call it distorted, but people present themselves and say, vote for me, because if you vote for me, these are the things I'm standing for. Because again, the population is asking, you want our vote to do what with it, okay? But it doesn't rule out what you're saying, because of course sometimes money is involved. So people are following crowds because of money. And it is possible that people might actually not hear what was said, because at the end of the day, they were focusing on getting the money. But for us to sit in Kampala and assume we are the only knowledgeable people, actually, we are the least knowledgeable people about electoral processes. The people out there are very knowledgeable, they know what they want, and they are waiting for these people.
My last question to you before I give parting shots. Political intrigue.
Yes.
We saw two political figures get somewhere pointing fingers.
The Prof made a very intriguing point that I'd like to
No,
yes.
Those are not intrigues, drama.
Scholarships and regime change.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I found that really intriguing for a person who is a beneficiary of a foreign education as well.
No. I'm a beneficiary of foreign education in health systems, but I'm talking about particular scholarships like yearly, like Mandela, Washington. They are particular, they are run in 3-week periods, and they are largely for younger people. And they all come back with mandates of when you go back, what are you going to do to transform society? That's a different matter from the regular scholarships for academic advancement.
But do you remember NUSU, the National Union of Students of Uganda, and the Young Democrats? These were party-based youth development programs.
And we are distinguishing...
And listen, when you start doing the Mandela thing, it is not intra-country. It's not in the country. It is another stage of political growth. But inside here, like FAD used to do, like CAS used to do, like FAD,
Not even the German development.
They are,
the
they are,
German
they are
fails.
different, they are
You
different
see,
levels, but they...
By this time, a party like NRM, with all the Chinese contacts, with all the what contacts, they should have built a political cadreship that we should see their young people stand out. Just look around and give me just 2 names of a young people that has been generated by the NRM over the last 40 years.
No, you're right in that, and it's a totally different thing that I'm
Instead,
articulating.
they are parasitic.
My point is that actually the division between younger people and old people is artificial and is being driven. What you're saying is right, that parties should actually cultivate a cadreship of younger people. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, it's the best way to go. World over, parties do that. But because that's not happening, people are being made to believe, the younger people are being made to believe that there's nothing for them to get from older people. That older people have shortchanged them. And by the old people, include everyone on this table. Because for them, they are younger people.
Means
no,
their
not, not Timothy.
And mothers.
No. To the younger people like I teach. Sometimes they've told us the reason they don't have jobs is because old people like us have refused to go. And at the time I was told that I was in my 40s. So the whole thing is being convoluted because the divide is being driven in a very artificial way. Yet actually there's a lot to learn from each other. If we did what you said, that parties were intentional at cultivating a younger group. Yes. But you see, that's not only in the NRM, you also find it in FDC and all the others.
The nursery beds, the political nursery beds and the political parties, if they're allowed to function normally, like we were before we were disrupted.
So you have a cadreship of younger people.
We do.
In FDC.
That's why ours is the biggest hunting ground for now, the NRM.
That is nice to know. Okay. Yeah, but basically what we are saying is, even with that, we should not be blind to the fact of those who are driving this narrative, which is very externally driven, and trying to create it as a vehicle for regime change. Because even when that occurs, if it's externally driven, it will not be responsive to the internal contradictions within the society. And that's where the problem comes in.
Okay, thank you. Let me read some feedback here. Timothy, let the elders in the studio know that the problems we're experiencing in Uganda is the problem of NRM leaders who have failed to keep their word. Captain Mike Mukula is on the list. Captain Mike Mukula openly and broad daylight about 5 years back told the Teso people that the entire country that he is out of elective politics. His captain spending sleepless nights vying for a safe position. Who's fooling who? As Anita said here, we are grateful and thankful to God. We have at least got an elder of integrity who in the region can run and mentor and guide young people. When is he starting to do this? Okay, thank you very much for that message. Timothy, thank you for the show. Honorable Salam Musumba is real and down to earth. She's giving us the nitty-gritties of society, socio-economics of the country. We shall not understand the realities if we talk like elitists, like Captain Mike Mukula is talking about general theories of foreign economies. We cannot keep hiding in population pressure on land and other resources. Why don't the independent Ugandans and the NRM of 40 years, why are they shy to talk about historicals, land inequalities, persons that have 100 square miles, 1,000 families on 1 acre? Who is fooling who? Half an acre for a family of 1,000 people? Why allow individuals possess such land, even when such land is not going to be used by them? The communities of the 15 regions need to be discussed regularly. Okay. Timothy, thank you for the show. Please remind the people that 16 years and below, these children belong to the younger population born during their regime. And the parents of these children are the ones who are still managing their future and mismanaging it. Do you want to tell me that the nation is okay? Should we keep seeing what we're seeing and say it's normal? This is John Bosco. Okay? Lastly but not least, Honorable Salam Musumba spoke so eloquently about Busoga under UPC NRM. Why is she not in UPC? Patrick Lira. Lastly, I'm called Walter. I am so humbled to have had Honorable Mike Mukula on the show. Thank you for the good work you people are doing. In Soroti, I was chased by different people and campaigning in Soroti because I love what he's doing. Our captain is the right person for the NRM. but also I want to know, can't he lead and become the chairman of the NRM? Okay, interesting. Abraham Odeke from Tororo says, I'm delighted to be watching and listening to the panelists and the 2 flight captains, and the destiny of the motherland is in safe hands. We thank Salam Musumba for our comments, and we thank all the people that are there. Okay, numerous comments, but we now need the 2 captains to make sure that we're descending properly. So we're going to have parting shots, and I'll start with Professor, Nick, Honorable Proskovia, Honorable Babu, and lastly, Honorable Mike Mukula.
Yes, thank you very much, Timothy. It has been an interesting conversation, and personally, traversing this country at this period, you do get a number of insights that we should focus on. One, what the people actually are planning to do for the masses. But another interesting thing I'm observing is the amount of investments that's going on in these communities. And my question is this a reflection of the absence of the state in development in rural areas, that actually now the populations have to wait for aspirants to cream as much as they can from them? Is it a thing now? Is it high time we looked at this, at elections, as a developmental process for this, or are we going to continue talking about regulations but also leave these areas underdeveloped? I think for me it is a parting shot we need to look at, but beyond that is to encourage those who are aspiring for the elections to actually have proper manifestos and proper promises to the people, in that what does their leadership mean for the areas they want to represent, beyond just giving money. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nick.
I'm always intrigued to hear about regime change agenda by foreign entities. Because I know for a fact that some of the countries being mentioned, if they truly want you out of power, you won't last another day. They've shown that in other parts of the world. It really drives me to think that those are not very well grounded thoughts and allegations. And I'd love to interrogate that a little bit further, because I have seen the impact in the lives of young people in this country from some of those interventions. The guy who runs, I think, Elgon Coffee here in Nakawa was a product of the Yali training, and as a result has been put in contact with many businesses across the US. He's supplying coffee to US coffee shops. I don't know if that guy really is being trained to be a regime change agent. There's been many people opening businesses. I spent time in the north with some young people who are producing honey and exporting high-grade honey to the US. And so I think that there's more to the debate than the reference to regime change. But to close, just to say that we must raise the cost of human rights violations if we are to have peaceful elections and indeed a peaceful society. Those who violate human rights must pay the cost for their actions through lawful means. We cannot continue to shield human rights violators. We cannot continue to promote them and give them more responsibilities. It is for those reasons that I fear, and I hope really I'm wrong, that the next election may not be as peaceful as we all want it to be, because those elements are still in charge of the state. You can see it in what they are saying publicly, boasting on Twitter about torturing people in basements, and they're being cheered on. Those are dangerous rhetorics that do not bode well for this country. I hope and pray that the elections will be peaceful.
Thank you very much. Honorable Salam.
The squandered revolution is what bothers me all the time. That young men went to Luwero with a promise that we'll build a better Uganda. And that has all been squandered with glee. That another set of young men will need to redeem this country is an indictment on the 40 years. As we build a viable, competitive nation for all of us to thrive, we need to change the software. The software has been corrupted by malware that needs cleaning up. And so what are we bequeathing to the next generation? I had really prayed and hoped that my generation would be that generation of well-educated, properly placed fellows. You hear about universities, Yale and and all Harvard. I mean, for what? For what? When you live in this republic where there seems to be nothing working. So the squandered revolution must be redeemed, and that demands from all of us to appreciate that we have not gotten it right, and so we need to make effort. Otherwise, our investment will go down the drain.
Thank you.
So it's an early warning sign that the restless, the equilibrium has been upset, and so you need to reset to get back into a political equilibrium that allows you to survive. And I pray, as I always do, that I'll be part of that team that resets the equilibrium.
Thank you very much. Honorable Captain Francis Babu.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about something very quickly. People have this argument about poverty throughout this country, and they normally talk about Kampala. I lived in this Kampala. I represented people in this Kampala. There are people in this town who are worse off than people who are in the villages. This town has got the most poorest people in this country, and people don't talk about it. I have, as I talk to you right now, there are people in this town who are living in verandas of those shops, and they estimated around 4,000.
Urban poverty.
Urban poverty. So when you are talking, please, don't talk about people who have managed to live here and there. Talk about poverty in the whole country, including this city.
Even New York.
Even New York has that one, anyway. Now.
Which village is New York?
No,
is it in Soroti?
My brother Pio travels to New York. He goes to lecture there. But when you see the levels of poverty in New York, the richest country in the world, even in Las Vegas, in California, you will be amazed, you will be shocked that this is not the country you talk about. But
okay,
people live under the bridges in New York in winter. They live in peppers. Anyway, not to go that far. We are talking about change. How do we get change in this country? We've been talking about elections, and therefore we've been talking about parties. The parties have to change, all of them. They have to change, and they've got to come with something new called character.
Okay.
We need character so that our elite who are in this country, she was just talking about a few international universities a few minutes ago, those elites, we are going to hold them as people who have created this problem because they have failed to bring out the character of our good people and our youth. Lastly, the programs and leadership programs of each party should be very carefully given to us so that we know how this country can change to a better nation.
Thank you very much. Lastly, Honorable Captain Mike Nkula.
Nyangwesho, thank you very much. And I want to say that I am in the private sector. I employ over 3,000 people. I run over 28 companies. I don't deal with government. There is no single transaction between me or any of my companies with government. None. Captain Babu will tell you this. At the end of the month, when you look at my wage bill, it is worrying. But it's a duty I have committed to help build the economy and creating opportunities for young people. For example, in the East, we are trying to create opportunity for milk. There is no single dairy plant across the Nile. Now, if we are to tackle the challenges you face, like in Busoga, in Bugisu, and so on, we must have value addition and opportunity for people to have such opportunities. That's what I'm trying to offer. When we had, for example, fuel, we've been to the fuel plant in Kauku, $270 billion investment with FDIs. The point I'm trying to tell you is that this is part of the transformation of the country. I'm in the practice of job creation. So when I talk about experience of changing the country, I am walking the talk. That's number one. Two, the elections in 2026 will be peaceful. And I want to tell you that nobody has got a monopoly of violence apart from government. So far, all these aspirants, whether it is in any political party, they have gone round. Nobody has interfered with them, and nobody will interfere with them, except when they cross the red line in terms of violence or intimidation and so on and so forth. That's when the police comes in, or the military or the security comes in. The point I'm trying to tell you is that so far so good. I see political parties all putting formations, organizing, no interference. And I want to assure really comrades on the other political parties that we also have iPod, where we can get together and see how best we can continue to vent and create a narrative of a peaceful election. And I really pray for a peaceful election. In conclusion, I want to thank all the panelists who have been here. It has been an amazing intellectual discourse and engagement. And I want to really assure the viewers who have been watching us that this is the new Uganda we are talking about. And I would really want to wish all of you who are the panelists and the viewers a peaceful night. Thank you, Nyangweso, for hosting us.
Timothy, I want to thank everybody. You know, I lost my son.
Yes.
I like to thank all Ugandans and all good people in this country who turned up. And if that is the spirit that my son brought about to bring us together, then let all the parties come together and let's become one.
Well said.
And thank you very much.
Gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for honoring our invite and being here. For everyone that sent in a message, I know there were too many for us to read, but we are really grateful for the production team making today possible. And I'd like to read a quote from Lee Kuan Yew that's quite lengthy. A nation is great not by its size alone, but by its will, its cohesion, stamina, discipline of both its people, and the quality of its leaders. This will ensure that it becomes honorable in the history of the world. Good morning.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
My name is Flight Captain George Michael Mkula, aspiring for the National Vice Chairman in charge of Eastern Uganda. The National Resistance Movement is a revolutionary party. It's founded on 4 ideals: patriotism, Pan-Africanism, social economic transformation, and democracy. General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, our historical revolutionary leader, has kept this country peaceful for the last few years. Uganda now is peaceful from the north to the south, east to the west. In this new term, our focus will be to address the issues of youth unemployment and to ensure that the youth are part of the vision of the transformation of this country. 2, poverty. We must ensure that we continue to reduce poverty in our population. Number 3 is to ensure that we deal with service delivery, to improve on our services in hospitals, schools, and ensure that there is water for everyone for production and to drink. We must also ensure that there is equitable distribution of wealth in Uganda. I therefore seek for your vote to be elected as the National Vice Chairman of the National Resistance Movement. Vote Captain Mkula.